We're rolling. Welcome to the REI Rookies Podcast, the Real Estate Investing Rookies Podcast, episode number 59, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Josh Koth. Jack Haas is off today, gallivanting around somewhere. And here at REI Rookies, we believe in a couple key principles. Number one, the best way to retain information is by teaching it to others. And number two, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors, we're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing. All right, guys, today we have an interview with Joe Fairless. He's a very prolific podcaster, and we had a great discussion on multifamily investing. So let's get into that interview with Joe Fairless right now.
We are here with Joe Fairless from the best real estate investing podcast ever. If you haven't listened to his show, I'm sure most of our listeners know of Joe. And we really appreciate your time, Joe, for joining us here today. And we thought we'd go through a few questions that we had personally, because we've been now doing real estate investing for a couple of years, and we've been presented more and more frequently multifamily opportunities. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of gave us a chance to ask a veteran in this part of the world a few questions about multifamily versus single family and reviewing those opportunities. But we wanted to kick things off with asking you about what was the root cause of you getting into real estate investing, and giving us a little background there.
I got into real estate investing because I needed to do something with money I was earning at my full-time job. I started out making $30,000 in New York City, which doesn't go very far, but then I climbed the corporate ladder relatively quickly, became the youngest vice president of a New York City advertising agency, was making I think a little over $100,000 before my 30th birthday. And as a result, and along the way, I kept my expenses relatively fixed as much as you can in New York City when you're renting. But I had a roommate. I was made fun of by all of my friends because I was living like a college kid, even though I was approaching 30 years old. I had a dorm-style refrigerator that's 3 feet tall, 2 feet wide, something like that. And my apartment was the size of like a shoebox. So it was very sparse living conditions, but I was tucking away the money I was making from going from 30,000 to, I ended up making 150 before I left advertising. And as a result, I was like, okay, now I finally have some money I can invest. What do I do? I first went to a bank and I put in my first $1,000 that I had into what was called a CD, which I did not know at the time was a certificate of deposit. Everyone here knows what that is, but I didn't at the time. And I had the bank held my money hostage for 12 very, very long months. And then I got back my return of $16. And I was like, and I got taxed on the $16. And so I was like, holy cow, I got to figure out what's going on. I've got to do something else. So I started reading more, read Investing for Dummies. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read a bunch of others. And then I saw the path, which was real estate. I just gravitated towards real estate over stocks and bonds and investing in startups. Because I understood it more, and that's why I got into real estate.
So now let me ask, think rather than money amount, was there any one thing that triggered that you needed to generate some passive income and you put the money to work for you, or was there anybody around you in your life that was doing it was generating passive income and that you wanted to model, or was it just your research led you there, or how did you even know that you wanted to generate passive income and put the money to work?
Well, I think I have some models in my life who are the opposite of that.
Right. Gotcha.
and I wanted to make sure that I was not in that situation. And I still do. I mean, I still think about how could I lose what I've got, and then what do I do to mitigate that risk?
Mm-hmm.
I still think about that today, and yeah, I'm a multimillionaire,
Mm-hmm.
but I still think about that today. So,
Right.
I think it's more about capital preservation and being able to build on that versus me wanting to having a role model who was set up. Yeah, I didn't necessarily have a rich dad, poor dad dynamic. I just had some people who I didn't want to be like, who I was rather close to.
So it's interesting that you said you kept your expenses at a lower level even as your income increased. Most people, those two rise in parallel in conjunction with each other. Did you find at the time that took a lot of willpower because you said your buddies are making fun of you?
No, I'm a minimalist.
Okay.
And I think what it boils down to is knowing what we like, because I was in New York City and I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I lived in 1 bedroom. Someone else a Craigslist roommate lived in the other bedroom, and there was no living room. There was just a kitchen and a bathroom. My friends started out in similar circumstances with apartments, but then they graduate, to a 1 bedroom and they live alone. But I'm from Texas, and to me, a good living experience is having a backyard. And regardless of how much money I was going to spend on an apartment to upgrade or graduate to, it wasn't going to get me a backyard in New York City. So there was no reason why I was going to spend more money to get something that I didn't really care about. And everyone's, if we look at our finances and what we spend money on, if we're honest, we've all got one Achilles heel. There's one thing where it's like we're not quite logical about how we spend money in that one area. Mm-hmm. It could be on our kids. It could be going to the movies. It could be shoes, whatever. And for me, it was going out. It was hanging out with my friends for me at the time. And it still kind of is. That's where I spend money on experiences, but not on stuff. I spend money on moments with people, but not on material items for the most part. And so it wasn't hard for me at all, but I'm also wired a little bit differently than perhaps others.
Awesome. So when you got into the real estate investing, did you start in the single families or did you jump right into the multifamilies?
Started with single families. I bought 4 single family homes, one more creatively than the other, or each one more creatively than the next one, I should say. The first one I bought for $76,000, 20% down payment, all in about $20K, just the typical loan. Mm-hmm. The second one I bought for, I'll get my numbers a little skewed because I don't quite remember now, but second one I bought for like $81,000. I do remember this. It was 10% down through a loan program called the Home Path Loan Program. And I'm not sure if that exists anymore because I don't buy single family homes, but it was a 10% down. So all in, it was $12,000 that I put into that house to acquire it, closing costs. The third house I bought all cash from money I had saved up, but then I also used a credit card for I think it was about $6,500 cash advance at 0% interest for a certain period of time, and then I put a loan on it shortly after closing, similar to what you guys do, and I got that money out. So I actually was in the property with no money in the deal. That's why, when I was interviewing you two on my podcast and you told me your business model, I was like, that sounds pretty familiar. I did that on my third house, paid off the credit card, and then I got back my money, and lo and behold, I've got a single family house that cash flows for no money out of pocket.
Sure.
And then the fourth house I bought from a wholesaler, and that was a train wreck. I lost maybe $1,000, $2,000 when the dust settled. I sold that one. That was an ugly duckling, but I still have my first 3 homes. And then I became apathetic towards my full.
When you purchased the property?
2000, October of 2009 was the first house that I purchased. It's almost 10 years.
And what market were you purchasing?
Oh, Dallas, Fort Worth. I was living in New York City.
Living in New York City.
Yeah. I bought it specifically Duncanville, Texas is where this house is located. Still got that one, the first one.
Okay.
And then I became apathetic towards my full-time job, and simultaneously I saw that I was making $250 a month on my homes, but then someone would move out and that would cost me $5,000, and there goes all the profits for the whole year and then some. Right. So I was like, I've got to own 1,000 homes, not 1,000, but a whole lot of homes for me to make a dent in my passive income.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I decided buy more at once, and that's when I got into multi.
So how did your numbers change when you analyzed those properties then, from going from a single family analysis to now a multifamily?
Well, it's numbers and execute. It's everything really, but specifically with numbers, cap rates are a factor with multifamily properties. They're pretty magical because it multiplies the value of your property based on the type of area that the property is located in. So, factor in the cap rates, factoring in the income of the property more so than sales comps. Sales comps are relevant, but really, it's the property is going to get a loan based on the income. You're going to pay for the property based on the income and location and the potential of the property to deliver on the business plan that you have envisioned. It's more strategy. It's 2.0, whereas single family homes, I was able to get like 3 or 4 pieces of information, and I'd be able to make an offer and close on the deal. How much? What's the value of the property? How much do I need to put into it in order to get it move-in ready? What's it rent for, and where's the location? I mean, that's really it. And okay, if I know those 4 pieces of information, then I know what to offer on the property, and I can either buy it or not. But with multifamily properties, what's the business plan? Where is it located? What condition is the property in? What are all the things I need to do in due diligence to determine the condition and those expenses? What's the age of the property? Why are they selling? What type of financing can I get? I mean, there's a whole laundry list of questions that are needing to be asked.
And one of the things people say when they get into multifamilies is, well, you have to do all this work for every deal anyways. Why not just do it for multiple units? But then you're kind of making the point, it is quite a bit more work up front before even making an offer, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, it's not buying one apartment building is the same as buying one single family house.
Exactly.
How much more, like what multiple of time does it take you to buy like your average 100 unit building versus a single family house? Is it as much, or? Good
question. Let me think about that, because it's been 7 years since I bought a single family house ish. Mm-hmm. I think 6 or 7 years. But besides my primary residence, but I thought about that differently. I'd say it's fair. A fairly seasoned single family home buyer and a fairly seasoned multifamily buyer, the multiple there, because we got to have a level playing field with the experience levels for each. I'd say 5 to 7 times. Yeah.
Awesome. Sure. How would you say your experience in working in the ad agency, has any of those skills translated over into real estate investing?
All of them. All of them. I mean, the number one thing is the greatest influencer of purchase intent is word of mouth referrals.
Right.
The number one influencer of purchase intent is word of mouth referrals. You guys have experienced that with a networking meetup that you host in Fargo. You've got deals from that. And I've experienced that with investors who I have in my deals and the podcast that I do.
Right.
And, as you guys have got a amazing podcast, 60 plus episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't your force.
That's cute, right? Nice.
What?
60.
Oh, 60.
Yeah.
Well, not everyone's psycho like me with 1,400 episodes, but it's word of mouth. It's building it. It's having the value first approach where you focus on others. You add value to other people's lives. Everyone knows this, but maybe not everyone does it on a daily basis. And you're going to get those word of mouth referrals, assuming you deliver on your expectations, and then every now and then exceed the expectations that you set.
Now let's talk about when you're trying to raise money for these deals. It's the old chicken or the egg conversation. Are you out there trying to lock up a deal on a property first and then raise the money, or do you try to raise money and then go look for a deal of where to place that money? Is there an order, or do you care?
There's an ideal order. The ideal order is money first, then deal with apartment buildings, because you're going to go a little crazy if you find the deal and then you're like, oh, now about that $1 million. How do I do that again? It's possible. I did that on my first one where I had some money that was some people who were interested, but not nearly what I needed. And then I found a deal. I was like, oh, I got to close in what time frame? Okay, let's buckle up. Let's do this. So ideally, the approach will be to raise verbal commitments. And investors aren't transferring money anywhere. It's just verbal interest.
Right.
Of investors whose goals align with what you can help them accomplish. And once you have, I like to do at least 30% more than what you think you need for your first deal, then you can go confidently look for deals, because people are going to drop off, but other people who you didn't think would invest will. That's just how it works. I don't know why, that's just how it works. So having that 30% buffer will be beneficial.
So how about when you're raising money, are you doing like a formal presentation, like with a PowerPoint? How official or casual is your pitch for investors?
The process for us is as follows. If we do not have a deal, then when they reach out to me, I simply email them an overview of Ashcroft Capital, our company, which includes case studies and our approach and everything else related to our business. And then I have a conversation with them. My assistant sets up a call and we have a conversation. Once we have established a relationship, then through that conversation, then they're included in my private investor list. And they will be notified via email along with everyone else at the same time whenever a new deal is available.
Gotcha.
When a new deal is available, how it goes is they receive an email. It says, here's the deal we're buying. Here's a couple of reasons why. Here's the investment package. And I'm taking commitment starting now, first come, first serve. And then we do a conference call, usually a couple days later, where my business partner and I go over the deal. We do a Q&A session at the end of the call. So we address all the questions and answers, and everyone can hear the questions and answers. I record the call so that if they're not able to attend, they get the link to recording afterwards. And then I just take the commitments as they come in from that point.
That's I like what you're doing there, because it creates that scarcity. It creates, movement on the investor's part where they have to jump in, or there's a fear of missing out, right? They got to act. So I love that strategy. I'm sure that totally works. And
well, it's the only fair way to do it, because if I don't do it first come, first serve, then how do I determine who gets in and who doesn't?
I love it though, because they're having to pursue you rather than the other way around. Because most people trying to raise money have their hand out saying, "I need money for this deal. Help me." Yeah, and you're saying, "Who wants to be part of this deal? Show me why you deserve to be."
Well, those are your words, not mine. I wouldn't say that, but I will say that that's how you asked me how I do it. That's how I do it. But how did I do it in the past? Not so much. Not so much as fluid of that. I mean, I just in 7 days raised $24 million. In 7 days, we raised $24 million for the 890 apartment units that we're purchasing next month.
Awesome. So
I've got a system now, and I've got a whole bunch of investors who have seen returns and referred their friends. And so I'm at a certain place. However, when I first got going, I was messaging people on LinkedIn who lived in the city that the property was located in, asking them to reconnect, even though I hadn't talked to them in 10 years. So it was a completely different approach when I first got started. And I don't want to have the perception be that, oh, well, shoot, this is how I can do it starting out. I mean, I rolled up my sleeves and I got dirty, and I got really scrappy to find investors to invest in the early deals. But fortunately, things have gone well, and so now it's built on top of each other.
How do you locate these properties? I know that, commercial listings, there's, MLSs and LoopNet and those types of commercial websites and things, but what percentage are you finding of those that are publicly available versus the ones that are off-market, word-of-mouth, referral-based?
We have 3,400 units. We're about to have like 4,200 units. Of those, I'll just say this, approximately 60% of our purchases have been pocket listings through broker relationships. Okay. Not publicly marketed, but also I doubt we were the only group the broker sent it to, but it wasn't, they didn't blast it out. And that's through relationships. And then 40% on market deals that were publicly marketed by brokers, just emailing out to the database, and we won the deal.
Now, let me ask you this. When you're going after a multifamily deal and the cap rate, that's how the valuation is determined. Are you trying to buy at a family spaces, you got a discount, or are you thinking I'm going to go in and raise the value after I buy it, and that's going to be where I really make the profit, or is it a combination of both?
Well, you want to buy it right. You want to buy it at least we always have properties that cash flow. So we buy properties that cash flow from day one, and then we enhance the revenue through interior renovations. Primarily, we do some other stuff too, exterior wise, but the primary moneymaker, cause and effect for dollar in, dollar out is the interior renovations.
Do you find you get your money back on those? Like, in single family rehabs, we know you get our money back maybe in kitchens and bathrooms and a couple other areas, but some money you're just not going to get back, right? So if you redo a unit, is that typically bring you back all your money and then some? Is that profitable, or is that just the only way that you'll be able to up the rents?
Well, by upping the rents we get, that is the return. So, but I understand the question, but when we do renovate the units, I mean, that is the direct cause and effect. But what we try to stay away from is buying properties that are distressed or have some heavy lifting exterior mechanicals that need to be completed, because then we don't see that direct cause and effect that you're talking about, because you can't increase rent. Yeah, you can't increase rent if you fix the plumbing issues, or you fix 70%, or you replace 70% of the air conditioning units. It's not a rental increase thing. So we try to stay away from those types of properties. But sometimes the numbers make sense where, okay, you fix that, and that contributes to has contributed to the type of resident who's been attracted to the property. They don't care as much about the nice stuff. Therefore, they might not have the money to pay for the nice stuff. But now when we buy it, we want a resident who enjoys living at a better quality community. And usually, that's an increased rent type thing.
Awesome.
So, well, why don't we wrap up with one last question? As you know, we talk to quite a few real estate investing rookies. What are the 2 things that you would recommend new investors prioritize?
Well, one thing that you two clearly prioritize, and that's the network. When I interviewed Robert Kiyosaki on my podcast, he said the richest people in the world build networks. Everyone else lives to work, or everyone else looks for work. The richest people in the network build networks. Everyone else looks for work. So build a network and do it by adding value. A good book on that is Ninja Selling by Larry Kindle. Highly recommend that book. I interviewed Larry. You can search Larry Kindle, Joe Fairless, and listen to that interview. Second thing would be read a bunch of books, listen to a bunch of podcasts, be educated in what you're doing, and then be focused. And that's the key. Know what you want to do. And if you don't know, then educate yourself on all the stuff, and then pick a path and be focused on that path. I buy apartment buildings. I don't do anything else. I don't buy single family homes. I don't do storage units. I do apartment buildings, value add apartment buildings. Class B, built between 1980, 2005, that are stabilized but have value add components in a major city. That's what I do. And I'm focused on it. And when I stay focused on something, when you stay focused as a newbie, stay focused on something, you'll be very powerful. But when you get scattered, that's where there are more points of vulnerability, and it's also more risk associated with being scattered.
Well, Joe, can you remind everybody where they can find you, follow you?
Yeah, sure. One is if you want a free guide for how to, a bunch of resources on investing in apartments, from websites to how to pick markets and places to go to research that online. Just email info@joefairless.com. So the email address is info@joefairless.com. Ask for the apartment resources guide, and Samantha on my team will get you that guide. And if you're a accredited investor looking to invest and build a relationship first, then you can go to investwithjoe.com.
Well, we really appreciate your time today, and we thank you very much for all of the information that you've provided today.
I'm grateful for our conversation. Really enjoyed getting to know you too.
Thanks a lot, Joe.
Again.
All right, guys, that was our interview with Joe Fairless. Make sure you check him out in the show notes. We'll have all his links down there. Hit us up at info@reirookies.com if you have any suggestions for show ideas or have any questions about real estate investing. We'd love to interface with you. Make sure you hit us up on Facebook or Twitter at REI Rookies. Hit iTunes up, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really helps other rookie investors out there find the show. And remember, get off the bench and get into the game. We'll see you next time. I'm Josh Koth, and Jack Haas is polishing his head right now.